Hey guys, so we're gonna start by using last Judge P session and try to build up something here. Good night. Sorry, I have a dog right here. Um. Anyways, as I was saying, I'm gonna do these SPU videos in this one session, and we're going to build up something. We're gonna form kind of a story within a story, kind of in that format. So I'll start with saying that when I was in DC, a random thought came to me. I don't know why it came to me, but I was thinking. Well, I've been thinking how I'm gonna say this for the past few days now. More like a week. Since it's been like a week since I did the last SPE video. It just feels like a few days to me, but yeah, I'm not gonna go into why I haven't. But when I was in DC, I had a thought came to me that if you have, okay, the SPU is the National Security Service of Ukraine. So when you gain independence for national security, well, you have to think it's the. I'm going to give you the surface level. I'm not going to go into depth. This is how I saw it initially. So you had the KGB and you had all the spy networks and all that. Suddenly, they had to represent the country for its independence. So when you have a spy agency that does that and does Russia, Ukraine, and the West, the EU didn't exist in 1991. I believe that was 1993. Let's make sure. Oops. What did you say, founded? Oh, I meant to do it in Google. Yeah, it was the European Union was officially founded on November 1st, 1993 when this treaty came into force. It evolved from early European communities forming after World War II, especially during the European Economic Community, founded in 1957 under the Treaties of Rome. Treaties of Rome. Never heard of that, but that's interesting. We should make note of that. Speaking of which, where's my sticky notes? I updated macOS 10 recently, and I just realized I don't know my sticky notes. There they are. I just had to. So let me. Treaties of Rome. That sounds interesting for a future video. If you're like, I can outline the key milestones that led into the EU's creation. So yeah, they didn't exist. The EU didn't exist. The whole European thing did not exist until 1993. So in 1991, you had the United States, you had Russia, and you had Ukraine. So when the SPU, people don't think of this, but the KGB had to suddenly represent Ukraine from these three different perspectives. And who are you supposed to listen to? If the USSR had collapsed, what would happen? And this is what I initially thought. I didn't think deep into this. I'll explain. I go deeper later in future videos. That's what this whole series is about. So you had the U.S., you had the SVU, and you had the KGB of Russia, basically. And when your country dissolves and you become independent as a sovereign country, well, the KGB suddenly has to make a decision. Who's it going to represent? You're going to have a faction, which means that you could call it corruption, but you have essentially a faction where you have to think, well, who's going to help represent our country? Do you have the Ukrainians? Do you have the ex-Soviets? Do you have the Russian KGB? Do you have the Russian president? Of course, if you're a sovereign country, you wouldn't follow a Russian president. You would have another one. But you would have influence from Russia and the United States. Make sense? So who do you listen to? The United States, Russia, Ukrainians? Ukrainians didn't really have much of a standing. There were nationalist movements in Ukraine during the USSR, but there was no plan to keep it a country. There was no overthrow or any coup like that that happened. So it was mainly the KGB. They had to represent the national security. But when you had a trifecta, am I using that word correctly? What does that mean? Trifecta? Trifecta. A combination or set of three wins or other things. A bet in which the person. A bet in which the person betting forecasts the first three finishers in a race in the correct order. That's interesting. Okay, it says right here, I know you can't read it, the dictionary on Mac OS. It says the trifecta when one political party controls both houses of the legislature and the governor's office. That's deeper than what I want to go into in this video, but that's basically what happened. To stay on the original topic of this video, I didn't think, okay, thinking past the SBU, I just thought you have these factions within the SBU trying to represent what Ukraine means and who to follow, which reminded me a lot about the Reconstruction era of the United States after the Civil War. So if you guys aren't familiar with that, I'll put it right here. What was the Reconstruction era of the after the Civil War? The Civil War. They were split into three parts. Who do you listen to when the slaves got free? Who do you listen to? Do you listen to the president, Congress? Do you listen to locals? Do you listen to other slaves? Some people thought listen to Frederick Douglass, or Abraham Lincoln. So it says here, the Reconstruction era was the period after the American Civil War when the United States worked to rebuild the South and redefine the status of formerly enslaved people. It lasted from 1865 to 1877. So about 20 years. No, wait, 10 years. 10 years. In simple terms, there was a time when the federal government tried to reintegrate Confederate states into the Union, rebuild the Southern economy and infrastructure, establish civil rights to formerly enslaved black Americans, redefine citizenship through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. It ended in 1877 when federal troops withdrew from the South, effectively ending Reconstruction and allowing Jim Crow systems to rise. If you want one word, reintegration. You can kind of see how this relates to Ukraine today. It's not a civil war. A civil war would be between its own people. In the SBU's eyes, they're kind of above. But so I got a notification on my phone. So you would think, well, it's between USSR, dividing and then reintegrating. Not for the country itself. Not for the country itself. The SBU is a level higher than that. What they see is the U.S. and Russia and Ukraine all reintegrating together. Which hasn't happened culturally before. Of course, it didn't happen before with the slaves either. But you can see how Russian troops would withdraw from Ukraine, effectively infiltrating and allowing Jim Crow system to rise. It has that same thing, and I was thinking, if it's so tightly close related to the what is it, the substance of this, I thought, well, did they do that on purpose? And then suddenly I was talking to somebody, and I was like, wait, I'll talk about this in the next video, but I thought, well, what if they did it on purpose? Like, what if it wasn't just, well, let's take something from the Reconstruction era and make it work, right? And reintegrate all the countries. You know, what if they took that idea and put it into Ukraine's independence? You could say that. I think you could say that. Interestingly, after a few days of thinking about that in Ukraine, I saw a bit of Zelensky's TV show, and there was one. Let's see if we can bring it up here. First, let's see if this is accurate enough. It says, what did Zelensky say in the first episodes of Becoming President in his TV show? What speech did he give? In one word. I'm expecting... It was very interesting when I put this together. No, it wasn't. There was a very specific speech he was given in his TV show. And people actually Ukrainians didn't catch on to it, like in the TV show. I don't think Ukrainians actually caught on to it. But people at the top knew what he was doing because they knew where that came from. If I remember correctly, it's been a while. It's been a few years since I've seen that. It was. I'm going to say it was a certain speech he gave that was taken from U.S. president. Actually, it was the inauguration of a certain president. Given, well, if I say inauguration, it's going to... I try not to lead it on like that. It says, it was a certain speech he gave that was taken from a U.S. president. Vlad's confirmed speech in the early episodes. Several people borrowed directly quoted speech by the U.S. president in one specific. Yeah, it was the Gettysburg Address. He borrowed the Gettysburg Address, and people were like, "That's the Gettysburg Address." So it was interesting that he's quoting Lincoln, you know, dealing with the Civil War and everything like that. So he's pretty much calling, whether people in Ukraine actually knew this or not, he was calling them in real life slaves. He was. By doing that. It was the Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address is the inauguration of Lincoln. Let me go into Google because it wasn't the Gettysburg. What was it? There was a Gettysburg Address and there was something else. Maybe it was. Let me think. I always get these two confused. Gettysburg Address. It's the one where he says, fellow countrymen. It was in his inauguration of his first inaugural address where he appealed to the South to avoid civil war. Right. So Zelensky was also saying that to avoid a civil war with Ukraine. You could also make that connection too. Servant of the people, fellow countrymen. See, it's not in here. But I do know that he did say that, and people were, in the TV show, people were catching on what. But I don't think, maybe the Ukrainians got that too. I think some people did, if they knew U.S. history and presidents. But for the majority of people, I don't know. I don't know. When I say majority, I'm also thinking about the people outside of the capital. I'm thinking of people who don't have access to that kind of information and only care about what's really going on locally. They don't know national or global news. That's what I mean by majority. Which in European countries that would be true. Europe is just like that. Capital cities have all the information, and the further you are, you get less influence. Except in certain situations like Donetsk and Luhansk, those regions, that's different. But yeah. Anyways, he says this, and yeah, interesting that he made that connection. So this is why I ended when I came up with that, and I call it the Unholy Trinity because who do you listen to? People, Reconstruction era. It was a big thing involving presidents, and presidents really didn't want to get involved, and they tried. There was one, I believe it was Andrew. Was it Andrew? I don't want to. It's not Andrew Jackson. Was it Andrew? I want to say Johnson. See, let's read this. During the Reconstruction era, formerly enslaved people did not follow just one single leader, but they listened most closely to those who represented freedom, protection, and political power. These primary figures and sources they looked to were the U.S. federal government, especially the Union Army, the Freedmen's Bureau, Abraham Lincoln before his assassination, radical Republicans in Congress, black community leaders and preachers. So yeah, they were listening to all these different people, and there was no single one leader. In essence, they listened to those who enforced liberty and could protect their rights. If you want it in one word, historically and symbolically, the answer is liberators. And there was one president that was vetoing everything. Yeah, and he actually was, I know that they tried to impeach him. I don't know if they succeeded. We'll find that out in a minute. Who was the president that kept vetoing Reconstruction? I think it was Andrew Johnson. I think that might be his last name. Andrew Johnson, yeah. He repeatedly vetoed Reconstruction legislation passed by Congress, including civil rights bills and acts aimed at protecting formerly enslaved people and reconstructing the South. Yeah, Andrew Johnson. He was he impeached for this? I know that they were trying to. Yeah. Yes. Andrew Johnson was impeached in 1868, largely because of his obstruction of Reconstruction policies, especially his repeated vetoes and his attempt to remove Secretary of War Edwin Stanton in defiance of Congress. He was not removed from office, though. The Senate fell one vote short of convicting him. So it says he was impeached, but he was not removed from office. Is that possible? So I got some other dogs in. I got 1, 2, 3. I got 5 dogs in here now. It's cold outside. I can't be outside. I'm doing this at night, so they're in here with me. So, yeah. That's why you hear these noises. Yeah, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know you could be impeached and not be removed from office. Interesting. But yeah, you got this, like I said, this, I want to call it a civil war. It's between the governments. It's the government trying to reconstruct itself to Ukraine and get on the same page. The CIA knows this. The Russian KGB, FSB knows this. The military knows this. Not the military of the United States, but the military of Ukraine, which is really the SBU, just in another organization, the GUR. You also have GRU, which is in Russia. They all know this. So yeah, how do you solve that problem? If the SBU cannot provide national security, and the people don't have a perception of what security and independence is, well, you end up with an identity crisis, and you can't protect your country. Protect your country from a war starting in the first place. So yeah, who do you listen to? And I want you to sit on that. I want you to think about that. That's how I originally saw it, and that makes sense. You know, everything makes sense. But in my next video, I'm going to do one video, and I'm going to try. It's not going to make a lot of sense, maybe, to you guys, but it will sound like complete left field, but it ties to the last video, the 4th video. I might make a 5th video, I don't know yet. But yeah, on the 3rd video, I'm going to be talking about consciousness and stuff like that. I know it doesn't sound like it aligns to this, but trust me, it will make sense when we put things together. So yeah, think about this, the Reconstruction era, Ukraine, the SBU, the West. When I say the West, I mean the United States in this case. The EU did not exist until 1993, as we saw up here. We went through this information, and so yeah. So I guess I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.